Hello, this is the Bureck CD Thermostat, and I'm making a quick video just to talk about what problems it solves and why you might want one of these over the remotes that come standard with the Chinese diesel heaters that these are compatible with. So the first big problem that we solved with this is temperature maintaining inside of a small space. So the way that the Chinese diesel heaters work by default, you can select a temperature, but once that temperature is reached, instead of turning the heater off, it will just turn it down to low. This works fine if you're in a large enough space, but in a small space, especially when it's not extremely cold outside, the heater will keep heating the space up. A lot of people will try to work around this by opening a window, but you end up burning a lot more fuel, and it's really still not a very comfortable temperature because you have a really cold draft and a really hot air source. So it doesn't really work that well. The other option is just to be manually turning it on and off, which is annoying, and again, you're not going to really have a very consistent temperature. So our thermostat pairs with the Chinese diesel heater, and it will automatically turn it on and off based on the internal thermostat within it to keep the temperature exactly what you want all the time without any user input. So another big thing that this solves is issues with fouling or sooting of your diesel heater. The workarounds that people use a lot of times will make the heater run inefficiently. Generally, the low setting on Chinese diesel heaters is very inefficient and produces a lot of soot during the combustion. This is okay in the short term, but it can cause your heater to foul up. Some people that are doing this will have issues after even just 1 month of use, and it'll foul up to the point where it might not consistently start or it might just not work at all. You can fix this, you just need to open it up and clean it out, but it requires that you uninstall it and you take it all apart and you know that you're comfortable doing that, and then you have to clean it all out, get really dirty, put it all back together and reinstall it. And this is not something that you want to be doing very frequently, much less once a month. So by using the CD thermostat, it will turn your diesel heater on and off whenever it needs to maintain the temperature. And you can set your diesel heater to run on high, which is generally a more efficient mode. Or if you have a carbon monoxide detector, you can set your diesel heater so that it runs at the most efficient setting possible. So it will always be running extremely efficiently, and you shouldn't have any sooting issues when you're running like that. Another thing that this helps with is flexibility. The thermostat in the diesel heaters, which again doesn't really work very well to begin with, but it's bound by the cord that comes out of your diesel heater to the brain of your diesel heater, the LCD remote control, or the LCD control, it's not remote rather. And sometimes you'll install it somewhere and then realize that for one reason or another that is not a good place for it. It might be just hard to get to, inconvenient. It might be near a draft, which will make your heater turn on or turn up to high more often than it should, or it might be too close to the hot air outlet, which will mean that it's reading that it's way hotter than it should be. With our CD thermostat, you can install it wherever you want, and it's very easy to move. There's two versions, one with a battery and one without a battery. The one with the battery is very easy. You can move it wherever you want. It's got a week battery life at a time, so you don't need to bounce it around too much more. The one without the battery, you just need to have a micro USB cable running to it. And you can buy an extremely long micro USB cable to run your cable anywhere you need to inside of your space, and you can plug it into multiple different outlets, which is much more flexible. And additionally, especially with the battery operated one, you can move it around as you move around. So if you're in bed, you can have it in bed with you to control things. If you're over in the kitchen, you can have it over there. Another thing with the flexibility, we let you choose the swing, which is the difference in temperature that will turn your heater on and will turn your heater off. Generally, heaters in houses or thermostats in houses will be using a swing of 1 or 2 degrees, which means that you'll be keeping the temperature within 1 or 2 degrees of the temperature that you set on the thermostat. This makes more sense in a larger space because generally the larger the space, the slower it will cool down and the slower it will heat up. So a 1 degree difference is a larger difference in the scheme of how the temperature is changing. Whereas in a small space, 1 to 2 degrees can happen extremely fast. It can happen just when you open the door. And sometimes you don't want your heater turning on and off all the time. The startup procedure can be a little noisy, and sometimes you just don't want it turning on and off all the time, and you don't need it to be such a tight range. So we let you choose. You can set it as wide as you want. You can have it up to 20 degrees if you don't want it turning on and off all that often, or you can have it down at 1 or 2 degrees if you want it to be a very consistent temperature. We also have a scheduling feature. Just like on home thermostats, you can choose what time of day you want your space to be what temperature and with what swing. So for instance, you can have the room heat up for you in the morning without you needing to interfere with it at all. So those are all the problems that we solve. Some things to consider with this diesel heater, with our thermostat for Chinese diesel heaters, is it's compatible with diesel heaters that use the simple remote, and I can show you those in just 1 second. Okay, so here's the simple remote. It's a simple 4-button on-off up-down remote. If you have this remote, then our thermostat is compatible with your diesel heater. Some diesel heaters come with this more advanced remote, and this is not going to be compatible. This uses a different communication scheme. However, the simple remote is much more common. It's on most of the diesel heaters, and most of the ones that come with an LCD will have that simple one. There's also some that don't work with any remotes, some of the rotary style knobs. And if that's the case, that you have a rotary style knob or an advanced remote, or not advanced, but the more complicated style remote, then you can change your LCD to be an LCD that communicates with a simpler remote, and then you're able to use the CD thermostat. And one other thing to take into consideration, based on the way the hardware works, when you're charging your CD thermostat with a battery, you'll be unable to use it as a thermostat for about 2.5 hours while it charges up and then takes a little bit of time to cool back down. The way that the lithium battery technology works, when you're charging a battery, it produces a lot of heat, and there's no real way to get around it inside of a product that's this size. The heat is going to heat up the whole board, and it's going to heat up the thermostat on board of the thermostat, and it'll have a invalid reading for what the temperature is. So you just need to make sure that you're not using it when you're charging it. And you let it get back down to the temperature, and it'll charge from empty to full in about 2 hours, and then give it maybe about 30 minutes to cool down, and then you're good to go again. And again, you'll only need to charge it once a week with the battery. Well, that's everything. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave us a comment or give us an email, and we'll get back to you with an answer and make a video if it's a big enough question that it needs a more in-depth response. Thank you.